back to the Bears Den with Drake Toll.
And welcome back into the Petty Clinic Low T Bears Den. Happy Monday, everybody. No such thing as a case of the Mondays when you're listening to Up-Tempo, and there's really no such thing as a case of the Mondays if you were paying attention to Baylor baseball this weekend or Baylor men's tennis. The men's tennis team going to the Sweet 16 in Orlando, and the baseball team staying hot, winning their fourth straight Big 12 series. The same team that was picked eighth in the Big 12 preseason standings. If you're following, that means the Big 12 coaches thought originally these Bears would not win more than 2 conference series. They've now won 4 straight. And on the show, to help us break it all down and talk a little bit about his illustrious career as well, former Baylor pitcher Max Garner. Max, thanks for joining the show with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, and ready to talk baseball.
A pleasure to have you on. Always love riffing some ball. And first and foremost, Max, I mean, your career, I'm looking at the accolades here. All Big 12 honorable mention, all Big 12 pitcher of the week, first team all Big 12, second team all Big 12, 2-time Big 12 commissioner's honor roll. I mean, come on. Not only were you a great baseball player, you were a genius too. Just what a career at Baylor, man. Kind of, how do you sum it up when folks ask you about your Baylor career now?
Oh man, I mean, it was the most fun of my life. I think just about anybody that I played with would say the same thing. You know, we put in a lot of hours that people don't see, and you know, every college athlete does that. But you know, we won a lot of games and had a good time doing it.
Max, you obviously an illustrious career at Baylor, and the success that you guys were able to accrue as well. You look at that super regional year in 2012, top 5 team in the country for most of the season, and just really had that hot stretch there toward the end of the year. What do you remember specifically about just the success of the team, not just in 2012, but across your 4 years here at Baylor?
I mean, 2012 really was different. We talked about it while it was all going on. We felt different that year. So that's, you know, it'd be hard to generalize that. That year, you know, what I remember is just how it was a lot of fun to play with the guys I was with, and Coach Smith was great. So we you know, it was just fun.
Max, we lost you there for a second, a couple of audio video issues, I think. I don't know if a connection or what it is, but I think we got you back now. I want to ask you, too, about that 2012, kind of on that 2012 team, and in there a couple of years, the Feed the Beaver movement. I think a lot of folks have forgotten about that and it's not brought up as much as I wish it was. Walk me through the old Feed the Beaver adage.
Yeah, there was a beaver living in the river right behind the right field foul pole. And, you know, he was up in the parking lot and everything after practice, after the season started. And, you know, Muncie and all those guys we had on that team were hitting home runs into the river. And, you know, someone just kind of said, hey, you know, feed the beaver. And, and then it just exploded to a level.
Oh, nice. Couple
you
more.
Hear me better?
I think we got you now. Let's try it now. Try it now.
I think it was with the video. I think that was killing it.
Nice. Perfect. We can riff with this. I can hear you loud and clear. That's the most important part, although you looked great. That 2012 year two, you know, you guys had that Texas A&M series. I remember that vividly. So, Max, I'm going to shoot you straight here. I grew up an Arkansas Razorback fan.
Wow.
And so 2012 hit. I vividly remember everything about that 3-game series in Waco, that super regional and all that came with it. But I also remember following a lot about Baylor that year because, you know, that was the year of the Bear. And that's really where I fell in love with Baylor. And that series against number 2 Texas A&M, where you came in to close out all 3 games. Do you remember that? And where does that rank amongst the best Baylor moments you had in your career?
That weekend was by far the best moment we ever had. Just as a team, it was kind of proof that our winning streak wasn't a fluke, which I think some people around the country were saying at the start of that streak. And it kind of proved to us that we could beat anybody in the country. And obviously with the crowds the way they were, both in Waco and in College Station, I mean, it was a blast. I remember almost every pitch I threw.
Wow. And I mean, with that crazy season you had, not just your junior year, but into your senior year, do you remember? I mean, do you still get stopped even now today, folks that recognize you or remember you from your baseball days?
Maybe not stopped, but when we get talking to Baylor fans about just about anything to do with sports, and it gets to the topic of when I was there and when I was playing, everybody remembers that 2012 team. Everybody remembers Feed the Beaver and all the crazy signs and shirts that were up, and just how awesome it was at the ballpark that year. I mean, the atmosphere was much better that year than it was any other time we were playing.
Max then drafted that 2013 year by the Miami Marlins in the 18th round, the 532nd pick. Take me through the draft process for you after your senior campaign and really where you went with baseball and then life after Baylor.
Yeah, I was a senior, obviously, so you don't have much leverage in the draft, and you kind of just, have to roll with the punches, and there's no negotiation or anything like that. And we thought I was going to be somewhere more in the 20s. And so I had left my house, wasn't even paying attention to my phone really, and was at a restaurant in the Lake Travis area. And, got a call from a number in Florida that I didn't recognize to tell me that I got drafted while I was eating lunch. And it was, it was pretty surreal. But as far as the process went, I had made a decision to come back for my senior year. I think I don't know that my draft position would have changed that much had I left after my junior year. But that was, junior year is when you have more of a, more on your plate to make a decision about, really, because it's how close are you to a degree, how much money are you going to make, what's the balance of those two things, and, what makes the best sense for you long term.
Well, Max, moving into the present with Baylor baseball this season, preseason number 8 in the country. Most folks thought that Baylor wouldn't be able to hold anybody else's jockstrap. This was going to be a down year for Coach Steve Rodriguez and the Bears, where you got an older pitching staff but younger bats that can't really get it together, and those wouldn't mesh. That was the narrative to start the season, and then they lost a series to UT Rio Grande Valley, and everybody thought, all right, the narrative was true. This team's just going to be mediocre, if not less than, this season. And that script has completely flipped. What is your overall, a broad assessment of what Baylor baseball has put together so far this season?
It's really impressive. I didn't know what to expect. You had heard that Jared McKenzie was going to be good coming out of high school, but you don't really know. And we knew we had Thomas and Pineda and a couple of those other guys coming back who'd seen some at bats, but you really are running a lot of young guys out there, especially in the batting order and on defense. And they've been impressive to watch. The at bats is the most impressive part of the series that I've paid attention to, which is really since West Virginia Tech and Kansas State. I've pretty much watched every inning, and the way they go about their at-bats is just really, really impressive and really professional, and it shows. I mean, we got 5 guys over 300 and a couple other knocking on the door. That's impressive.
Max, as someone that still keeps up with Baylor baseball and a Baylor baseball alumni, when they dropped those 2 against UT Rio Grande Valley, they dropped 2 at the Round Rock Classic. They start the season at 2-4, and it was a really, really ugly 2-4. At that point, from a fan, alumni standpoint, I mean, do you just have complete reservations on the season?
Yeah, because it's a little bit different feeling from this perspective than actually being in the locker room, where until you are midway through a year and you're out of contention, the locker room's always going to be positive. You can turn it around and get back into the NCAA tournament or in contention in conference. So it's it's a little harder to hold your tongue and everything from the outside, because it was bad. I mean, they're making errors, not scoring runs. Pitchers were walking people. One of those 3 things could cause you to lose a game, and they were pretty much doing all 3 every game there to start. And then they got some games against some teams that weren't as talented as them, honestly, and got that win streak going. And sometimes, that you just need some confidence. And we played some good teams to start the year other than Rio Grande. I think that was just, a little shell shock for the young guys, but played some other good teams to start the year. And then, got that little win streak and got some confidence up for some of these guys that haven't played a lot. And I think that helped. But then obviously you run into two of the best teams in the country to start conference, and that, that's just a tough draw in the schedule.
Max, I'm looking at that 2011 season that you guys played, that really one of those last years with Big 12 competition the way that it was. And it was up and down and rocky prior to the 2012 year where things really turned around. I want to know from your standpoint as a player, when you're in the locker room, knowing that you've got to put something together to turn a season around, what is that mantra? Every team wants to do, LSU wants to do it right now. They're not going to make the postseason. But how do you go from just saying it to speaking it into existence?
I think it's probably different for every team. For us in 2011, I think we made up a lot of ground and, halfway through conference and later in the season, if I'm really remembering right. And we had people still kind of not in the roles that they were going to be in to close the year out. By the end of that conference season, I was the closer. We had moved a couple of things around in the starting rotation where we had taken Brooks Pinkard from the closing position and turned him into a starter. And that all was constantly changing at the beginning of that year. And so it was difficult where we were losing some games and then also getting put in situations where we weren't necessarily comfortable, but we were trying to find the right combination of things to be successful. And some of that is just going to be plug and play and see how it goes. But a lot of it was, just intense focus at practice so that you can really trust yourself when you get back out there.
Obviously, Max, Baylor baseball has taken that turn this season and turned into one of the better teams in Big 12 play. Now just 9-9 in conference, but considering where they started at, I think it was 2-7. So to be now 9-9, win their last 4 series in conference play, even that Tech series. We talked about it being a combination of older arms and younger bats. It's so odd to me how, especially in this COVID year, you got guys like Andy Thomas that are 30 playing with guys that are your true freshmen and 18. Cam Cayley, starting pitcher for Baylor on Saturday, one of those guys. How, in your experience, tough is it to mesh with a guy when you are the freshman on the team with a senior, or a senior to a freshman, vice versa?
I think it's not as hard as you would think. I mean, they're definitely, if you have a couple of fifth-year seniors or even, 4-year guys, they're noticeably older. There's a really big jump from 18 to 23. I think everyone can tell. But, when you're in the locker room, it's the age difference is much less noticeable because it's all kind of banter that you've done on other teams, and it's not necessarily an age thing once you're all at the field. Now, it's still good to ask questions and rub up on those seniors and see if you can't learn a few things early. But I think as far as, just getting along with each other and being able to work at the field together, it's not quite as much of a gap as everyone might think.
Max, even with that, what Coach Steve Rodriguez has done to put together this roster, this lineup, and where he's got the team in general, I know you didn't have the opportunity to play for him, but what does this say about him and his coaching staff, the fact that they've turned this season around with a cast of guys, like we said, older arms and younger bats?
Says a lot. I mean, obviously everyone didn't think anything of this group coming into the year, and old pitching definitely helps, but obviously as far as I'm concerned, the offense has been the highlight, and, some of that's just good recruiting. You got to get good guys who can play, and they've done that. But obviously it really helps. We've got 2 of the best hitters in the country in the middle of our lineup, and that can fix a lot of wrongs.
Max, along with it, moving into postseason play, Baylor is really on that 2 to 3 seed bubble, which to me, there's not much of a difference between the 2 or the 3. I mean, the one team's going to be at home for the first game of the postseason, the other team's not. But really, what other difference do you get? That said, though, what does this squad need to do moving into their last 2 series against Oklahoma State and Oklahoma to help further solidify their resume? And really, what's a ceiling for them with these two series?
I think they should be going into these series expecting to win them. Oklahoma State was obviously hot to start the year. I think they got up all the way into the top 10 in the first, few weeks of the year. And it's never fun in any sport to go to Stillwater. I think everyone's pretty aware of that. But That's a winnable series. With the way our bats are swinging right now, it's a winnable series. You would have said the same thing about Texas Tech, is you normally hope to go up there and just steal one game. But, with the way the offense is going, I think you got to be looking to win 4 or 5 of these 6 games and really make a push. And, maybe Tech loses a couple and you slide into 3rd place, and that'll give you not just a 2 seed, but maybe a higher 2 seed that puts you in a pretty winnable regional.
Yeah, Max, I think at this point, especially with COVID, and they do it every year, they try to make sure these regionals are exactly that, regional, and they keep a lot of teams near one another. So I think Baylor's doing everything that it can to stay away from that Arkansas regional moving into the postseason. With that, though, you got Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. Then you go to Oklahoma City for the Big 12 tournament. Past that, the NCAA tournament. Max, what gives you the confidence that this Baylor squad can make a run when it comes to postseason play?
The at-bats and the fact that the pitchers are old. I mean, the pitchers have all been there. They've played in the postseason. A couple of them probably on that team that won the Big 12 tournament. Pitching is where you're standing out there on your own, and you got a couple of young guys in a postseason situation or last series of the year that really means something. And it's a tight game out there in the 7th or 8th inning, and they haven't pitched in a week and a half or something like that, then that's a pretty tough situation to be in. But having all these juniors and seniors, I think is really going to make a big difference with that. And then everything else is just, the offense is obvious. They're doing it in every way. They're stealing bases, hitting home runs, bunting people around, walks, singles, everything. And so, if you score 5-6 runs, you got a chance against about anybody. And
Max, last question here for you. I asked you what, in your opinion, how can they? But I'm saying that question, how can they? This question, what do they have to do? You were right there, 1 out away from going to the College World Series. You've seen what teams have to do to make a postseason run. Not necessarily what gives you the confidence, but what do they have to do then to be able to do it?
You got to keep your wits about you late in games. I think everyone remembered how the second game of the Arkansas series ended for us, and that was the first time we'd had anybody, and it was multiple people, and it was the first time we had anybody tense up in a big situation the whole year. You've got to be so focused on not on what the situation is, but just on approaching the next pitch or the next hitter or the next ball that comes to you, as it's just like the first inning of a game in February. It's got to be the same feeling for you, or as much as you can make it the same feeling. Because if you sit there and think about the situation or the fact that you're knocking on the door to fly up to Omaha or something like that, then you can you're focusing on the wrong stuff. You're not focusing on what's about to happen.
And Max, our Bear Games question of the day for you. So with Baylor baseball putting up 17 runs yesterday in the 5th inning, we're asking folks, whether it be as a player, because most people didn't play past high school, junior high, myself included, whether it be as a player or a fan, what's the most demoralizing loss that you've been a part of?
Oh, man, I mean, demoralizing more than just being sad. I don't know. Every time anyone asks me about a loss, all I can ever think about is that Arkansas series. So that's probably my answer, even though we obviously didn't get blown out or anything like that. We had a couple of games where we lost by 10 or something in college, but once you're 8 years out the door, those aren't the ones you really remember.
Well, Max, thank you for joining the show today and breaking down Baylor baseball with us. It's been a pleasure to get your thoughts on your career and then the Baylor baseball team this year, and hopefully they keep on marching.
Hey, appreciate it. Sick and Bears.
Absolutely. Again, that's Max Garner. Former Baylor pitcher, was a closer on that 2012 team that recorded 3 saves against number 2 Texas A&M. 10 saves over the course of the season, led the Big 12 in saves, an illustrious career as a Baylor baseball player. Speaking of careers, Baylor baseball players, up next, we're joined by Hayden Kettler, current starting pitcher who got another win over the course of this past weekend, locking down Kansas State. We're going to talk to him about it and about this team moving forward. I'm Drake Toll. Armstrong